Well, hey, I'm back. I'm back with you. And I want you to, again, be welcome to this Emerge to Live in Purpose. Well, today I'm back and I want to continue this conversation about Daniel. And what I want to do is kind of just pull back and look at some things a little more in detail, not really getting out of chapter 1, but just looking at a few things real quickly, just to remind you that we're on this journey to transformation and just some key things. We all know the story of Daniel and how it all kind of rolls out with the scenario with the king and the being put in the lion's den. But I really want to roll back and look at those small details that can help us see some important things that we can relate to in our lives in this day and time. And really what have drawn me to this particular book is the fact that I feel like we're living history again, in terms of being a people that's in a time in history that as seemingly is evolving so much to where we are the culture, the age, the era that we live in is taking such a shape that's so far removed from God that it feels like, oh, we're almost in a day that's similar to Daniel. And so that's what has drawn my attention to this particular book. And so when I think about Daniel, I think about him and his friends, and it goes back. I go back to how they made a stand in the very beginning that they were going to remain consecrated. And what can we take from that? If we think about the day and time that we live in, how much more do we need to take a stand to be consecrated? We go back and look at, Daniel and his friends, the people of God were being exiled because of sin, removed from the southern kingdom, divided kingdom. It had already occurred between Israel and Judah. They're now in exile and moved or are being brought over to Babylon. And there's some things we want to note as it relates to Babylon as well. But they're in this place, but they are still being recognized for their skills, abilities, their talents among the leadership of the land. And with that being said, that's pretty important. How much are we still yet to be recognized in a day and time that we live in, yet to provide service? In a lot of cases, we have to work. We have employment. We have to do things for a living. But going back to this scenario, their names were being renamed. They were being taken out of their culture. Their names, a new identity was being placed on them. And the names that they were given were in reference to serving and being a part of that culture. So that's something interesting. How many of us have been removed and another name or label has been tried to be placed on us? If we go back and think about Daniel and all of his friends, their names had references to God. That's interesting. Hananiah, Yahweh has acted graciously. Mishael may have meant who is what God is, Yahweh. And then going on to Azariah, Yahweh has helped. So we see these references, and Daniel, parts of his name, El, it represents or relate to Elohim. And again, Azariah, the IH, refers to Yahweh. So interesting thing there is how many of us are associated with people we may not know the meaning of their names, but do we see in their character, in their the way they carry themselves, their behavior, their lifestyle? Does it represent more of character and qualities of Christ, of God's way and order and business of doing things? See, for example, I can look at my name, which in Greek means is pronounced Alexandrios, which means to ward off, defender. A defender of man. And in assisting man. And the way that I do that in my day-to-day job is in daytime, during the day, I'm a professor. Also, I teach in a Bible college. So I assist and I teach in that capacity to give back and to help others. So you may want to do further research and look at, well, what does my name mean and how might that be displayed in my life currently without me even having knowledge of it. It's just something to think about. So as I move on, I think about God places a desire. He's placed a desire in me to ramp up, to further assist people. And here, what people are you associated with? I've already asked you that. But Daniel and his friends, again, they were removed. The identity was trying to be taken away from them. And the significance of where they are. It goes to say how much they were in a place that didn't represent God at all. Babylon points all the way back to the Tower of Babel. And if we know and we have any understanding of the Tower of Babel, we know that there were people that wanted to, in their human efforts and their human activity and their ability to be creative and to construct, they felt that they were going to reach the heavens and be on the same level as their creator. And you know, God was not going to have that. Babylon is also known as an archetype. And what I mean by archetype is that it is a pattern. It's a model of what we can relate to here as a decadence. And what do we mean by decadence? A moral or culture decline and characterized by excessive indulgence in pleasure or luxury. So with that being said, we do now see how much more Daniel and his friends wanted to make a stand for God. They did not want to be defiled. They did not want to walk into a culture that was going to remove them from God. They wanted to remain pure and holy. In fact, they wanted to honor the laws of God. They wanted to go back and make sure that they were going to stay true to Yahweh, to Yeshua, to the God of Israel. Although the coincidental thing or the ironic thing here is that they end up in captivity because of their sin. But Daniel and his friends represented the opposite of that. So that's a good thing for us to see. And this transformation is what we need to be looking for in our lives. This commitment that we're going to stand true, that our lives can change and represent another culture. We're in this world, but we're not to be of this world. We're not to be of this era. We're not to be of this system that will cause us to not live in a way that God can get glory out of our lives. See, when we think about it for a minute, Daniel and his friends, they made decisions. They made decisions that were going to direct their destiny. So, with that being said, have you gone through anything right now that's causing you to rethink life? Are you going through anything that you wonder, how long am I going to be in this mess? How long am I going to deal with this? You may have lost your job. You know, we've seen a lot going on around us that affected people in not such a great way. But what is it going to push us to? Is it going to push us to God? Is it going to push us to Him? I hope that it does. I hope that on this journey to transformation that you're going to continue. You're going to continue along with me. You're going to be a person that's saying, you know, I've had some things going in my life and they were pushing me in a direction, and I'm not going to stop being pushed in that direction. It's going to help me to be all that I'm supposed to be. I remember back in 2010, a time in my life that I needed something different. And it was a matter of frustration that reached a height that it had to be a change. And so my frustration became the fuel to fire me up, that I was going to have I was going to have the future that I desired. So I even look back now this morning, I looked at the last time, or the very first time I did a Facebook post, and it was back in December of 2015. See, some things we're going to do in our life that we're supposed to continue, it doesn't mean that it's not going to come together. We just may have to put a little more time in it. I've been at this for 9 years and 3 months, but a lot has happened. Have gotten more direction, more insight. And the urgency is on me now to keep pushing, to keep going. So what's the urgency? What's the urgency in your life? You know, our mind being renewed is a big part of it. Last video I mentioned Romans 12:1-2. We have to keep that in the mix. We can't take that out of the mix. That is part of our transformation. We have to realize that the sacrifices that occurred back in Numbers and Leviticus, we don't have to do them today, but in different ways, we do still sacrifice. Sacrifice is just simply where we make a denial of ourselves, that God can be first in our lives. See, back then it was about a sacrifice was where the life was in the blood, and that life had to be given for remission of sins. And there was a foreshadow of Christ who would come and be the ultimate sacrifice. So no, we don't have to sacrifice in that way, but we still need to be looking at our lives and how much we're supposed to be sacrificing, that God can do a great work in us, that we can walk in our assignment. So I just hope these few minutes here has been a help to you. Consider what God wants to do in you. You're going to go through some things, and we all have. But what is it that God wants to bring out of you? Have you been frustrated? Just some questions here. Have you been set up? I think you have been set up by God, because He still has some things He wants to do. You know, you might be pursuing wealth. You might be wanting to pursue some greater things, a greater desire for your future, but they're going to come only, I think, when you get engulfed in Him. Have you got all the answers you need? Probably not. So what does that mean? Does that mean you need to press more to God? See, our transformation is hinged on our ability to approach God in the right way, to understand Him, His ways, and to resolve that we're going to follow His order. So I pray that you will choose Him. Take a stand for the transformation that He wants you to walk in. Until the next time, stay encouraged. Continue to press, because God is not through with any of us. I'll leave you with this statement here. Let God arise and his enemies be scattered.